All right. So I am really excited to do this with a friend. And the reason that we launched Shop Small Sunday at Noble is because supporting and empowering each other is really a mandate for us. And so, to that end, every Sunday, Noble is highlighting different entrepreneurs and creatives who are doing amazing things. And this year has been a mess, and 2020 continues to challenge all of us. So, I feel more importantly than ever that we've really got to support each other, empower each other, and the end of the day, we're all in this together. So, on that note, without further ado, I would like to introduce my friend, Sadé Hooks. Sadé is a Brooklyn based maker currently materializing her creative ideas through jewelry. Her interest in the decorative art form lies with the fact that all jewelry has the power to create an energetic transference between the object and the wearer. They hold stories, memories, and feelings while also having the ability to transform, strengthen, and protect. Inspired by modernist and process art, mythology, aesthetics, and astronomy, Sade creates contemporary heirlooms that are designed to be kept forever and imbued with the experiences and magic of those that wear them. And I have my favorite ring on right now. I don't know if you guys can see that. Hey! Okay, so let's jump right in. How did you get into jewelry making?
So I actually have always like been like a creative kid, like ever since I was like 3 or 4, I was like always making stuff. And like even I guess like in the early 90s, there was like this jewelry kit that came in, you could buy at the toy store where you like bake your own jewelry. And I remember getting that for Christmas one year and being like super obsessed with it. Um, and then when I was 16, my mom sent me to fashion camp at FIT, and you had like a free reign of different kinds of like intro to fashion courses. And the class that I took, that I loved so much, was an intro to metalsmithing course. And it was just so like life changing. You get to make things with your hands and you get to take it home and wear it. Like it was more immediate than fashion design. And it felt a little bit more approachable than like illustration or photography or these other things that require so much to like compose like the perfect thing. And jewelry can be messy and it can be ugly and it can just be what it is. um, and I kind of just kept making jewelry, sold like things on Etsy as I got older, but it was like, you know, chain and like wire wrap and like, beads and stuff like that. And I even like taught jewelry classes to like middle-aged women in Virginia during the recession. Um, and it just was always something that sat with me. And then I realized that I kind of wanted to get a little bit more serious about it. So I took a class at FIT in wax carving, which is like my primary method of making jewelry. And it again was one of those like life-changing moments, and I was like, wow, like I could literally sit here and just like mold this thing with my hands and like create something out of literally a block of wax, and then it gets made into metal and then I can wear it and it's mine. So yeah, that's really it. And then it kind of just spiraled from there, and I just
So
stuck
that
with it.
sounds amazing. I wish I went to FIT camp when I was 16.
It was really fun.
I hope that's still around because it sounds like really like a great opportunity for people to start to explore if you have any creative inclination whatsoever in any field, it sounds like, right?
Yeah, and the staff was like super supportive. Most of the kids that went there were like New York City kids or Jersey kids, and I had family in New Jersey that I stayed with. So that was like an adventure because you felt like a little adult because you're like, I'm in charge of my life and I get to do all these creative things. And it was really cool. And I kind of like I wanted to go back the following year, and my mom was like, you're getting a job. And I'm like, oh, dang. um, but yeah, it's great. I think it's still around. It's called like Summer Live or something like that, but it's like a summer program for teens and high schoolers.
Cool. So when did you know, obviously you've had this passion for a while, you got a couple opportunities to explore it. Then when did you know that you really had something here and you're like, you know what, I'm going to start my own line?
So my line actually started when I was toying around with this idea of making. I've been like I had gone through a breakup, and I was kind of toying with like ideas around aesthetics and beauty and what makes you beautiful and what makes people attracted to you, because I've always kind of felt like this like, I was always like this is not even to be like negative. I just like never felt like the super cute friend amongst my friends. So I kind of just like always had this like low key like hit to my self confidence ever since I was like a teenager. But I always just like liked myself. I was just kind of like, oh, like they're the cute ones. I'm just like the weird goofy one. And then as I had started like going through, started dating again, and I was like thinking about these things. I was thinking about how I look and my appearance, and what I think about my own personal aesthetics as well. And I made this ring, which is like my Medusa ring that I call it. It's my bust. It's literally my head. And I was like, I'm going to sell myself. I'm literally going to turn myself into an object of desire, and I'm going to sell myself as like a joke. And I just like made a few prototypes and wore them. And I was weirdest places, and people were like, what is that? And I'm like, oh, it's just my head, no big deal. And more people kept asking about it. And I just wound up like kind of cobbling some other pieces that I had made and just worn, and made for other reasons as well, and launched my site. And I think it was like 3 years ago, I want to say. But it was really that ring that like made me realize like, oh, I could make things and sell them because people are interested in them. Whereas,
so you did like impromptu market research almost by just like wearing your pieces yourself and just getting a lot of traction from people around you who I guess reinforce that you are amazing and that you can make amazing things, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that helps, right? Like when you get that validation from people, and I'm not like one for validation at all. So I'm always like, if I like it, I'll just wear it. But like when there have been like a lot of different times where I've made things and people have been like, what is that? Like, can I get in on that? And I'm like, I just like made it in like 15 minutes in my house, no big deal. And then I was like, oh, maybe I need to like explore like my talents a bit more and start like, if there is somebody out there, there has to be more people out there that are interested versus like just following a trend for the sake of following a trend. And I think that's been like one of my principles with my design in general, is that I usually just make for myself, and I make what I make because I like it versus making because I know it's going to sell or because it's cool right now, which is kind of like a backwards model. It's not one that's really driven on income and like, making money. But I think that's really important if you want to keep it exciting, and if you want to keep it personal, and if you want to keep it, something. I mean, when you have a business, something you own, it should be an extension of you. And if you're making something that's basically like a fine art practice, I guess that's what it is. It's important that you still have that, like that tangent between you and the thing. And I think that if I'm creating for the sake of creating for a trend, I think I lose that. And I think I would get bored with it, and I would probably stop making versus just like making something that I need for myself or that I want for myself. And then seeing if that maybe other people like it, which people usually do. So yeah, that was a really long-winded answer. I'm sorry.
That's great. So like as part of your process, like let's say you're designing a collection, it sounds like, a lot of it comes from things that you really resonate with directly yourself. And then you're picking the brains of people around you to see, hey, is this something that only I like, or maybe somebody else would like also? But I guess as you're going through that process, kind of where do you know, okay, I really have something, or I need to pivot? And how do you kind of edit it down so that you are kind of still thinking about, the business side of it?
I think I've always had like a decent taste radar in general. So I usually like kind of go off of like a feeling. So there have been like a couple of things that I made that I thought I was going to sell it. And then I like kept looking at it and I'm like, no, this is not it. Like, I don't like it. Like, it's not going to work. And, I think sometimes like I have to like put on my marketing brain and be like, okay, well, I can sell it. And if I do it this way or that way, then like it could be like somewhat a little bit more profitable or whatever, depending on what I'm making. But I think it's been more like it's definitely been more of a feeling thing. I feel like if I sense that something's not selling or doing well, or it's been like a little too complicated to get it produced because I make things up to a certain point, then I send it to a caster that does like all the castings and the finishings, and I have all my molds and stuff like that. And if I find that like the back and forth between the caster is like too much time or too much money, meaning too much of my time, which in theory is money, then I'm like, maybe this is not going to work because I can't spend like 3 hours trying to make sure something turns out okay or looks okay. And if it's not going to work, then it's not going to be profitable, and I'm not going to sell it. And I'll just keep it for myself. And then if later somebody else is like, oh, I really like that, maybe I'll resell it again or rethink how it's made. But yeah, at the end of the day, it usually just comes from feeling, and just, really thinking if what I'm making is worth my time or worth the time, especially since, when you're doing this and you're balancing a full-time job as well, like you have to really be cognizant of the amount of time that you're investing to certain things. Not saying that, like, if you're making something and it is taking you like a while to figure it out, if you really want to figure it out, if you want to spend time doing that. But I think you get to a certain point in your business where you realize, like, okay, I can't spend 4 weeks trying to work on one thing and trying to get it to work, because if it's not going to work, then I just lost 4 weeks, and I lost 4 weeks of being able to sell this. I lost 4 weeks of, like, time focusing on other things. And I kind of ran into that issue a little bit with one of the newer rings that's coming out. But I realized that was because I was trying to take like a kind of like a backdoor way of making more of that ring, and expanding the sizes versus just like recarving it, which probably would have taken me like a lot less time. But then I learned my lesson. So for the next time, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to like just do it the right way, versus me trying to like get all crafty. I think it's going to take me like, oh, it's going to cut me like, I'm save a week if I do it this way. And I wound up spending 2 weeks doing it.
I think we're all guilty of that. We all think that somehow like taking the shortcut will be faster, but then you get lost along the way and it takes you twice as long to get where you were
like,
going.
Wow, it's been a month and I'm still working on this, and it was supposed to be done 3 weeks ago. Yeah, definitely.
So you mentioned you started the line 3 years ago, and you also just mentioned about that you've been doing this while having a full-time job. So obviously time management is super key, but how did you kind of juggle, and what were some of the challenges?
When I started the line, I was really, really lucky to work at a company that had like this weird like flex hour system. So you could take like a 2-hour lunch break. You just had to make up the hours at like the top of the day or the bottom of the day. And so I was really fortunate with that, because I had gotten my, by the time I like was ready to start, I was already familiar with the Diamond District, and I had my vendors that I usually go to, and I knew how long it would take me to get up there, have the conversation or drop something off, and then get back. And that was like an hour and a half. And so I was really, really lucky to have that time. And I was actually really grateful to have that time, because I was like, I would not have been able to do this if I wasn't afforded that time to do it. And then I would just spend some of my evenings as well working on pieces and stuff like that. I come from a PR and marketing background, so sometimes my evenings are not my own. I would have to go to events or be hosting events or doing things where I had to be like in people's faces all the time. So by the time I came home, all I wanted to do was like collapse face down on my bed. But then you have your weekends. And I do not have any children, but I treated my line as my child for however long that took to get it off the ground. And even now I still feel the same way, because you have to nurture it. You have to feed it. You have to, make sure it's okay. And you have to like, give it love and make sure you're still loving it. And, I definitely have my moments where I'm like, oh, do I even want to do this anymore? And then of course, like, I'm very big into signs. The universe will always give me a sign that's like, yeah, you are. Like, I'll just get it like an order as soon as I have like a negative thought, or I will, some other great thing would happen. But I think the balance is just more like figuring out how you can utilize your schedule and maximize any free time that you have. I have a very like involved practice. Like, I have to sit and make things. I have to exchange with my casters. If you talk to any jewelry designer that works with anybody in the Diamond District, like, it is just a lot of like literal legwork, like a lot of trekking to Midtown, a lot of like knocking on doors, a lot of like, quality control work that you have to do on your own. Whereas if I was somebody who had a different creative practice, like if I was an illustrator or something that didn't involve the help of other people, I think it would probably be a little bit easier to figure out how to like maneuver my time and schedule and stuff like that.
Okay. Well, I think also along those lines, like right now, something that I feel like has been a real change in people's times and how they're spending it has been, like a lot of people right now, our habits have changed because of COVID. And so there's a ton of people who are home these days. Maybe they kind of like 3 years ago might have had something that they wanted to start doing, but never had the time before to really devote to it, but might now. And what would be some tips that you would have if somebody really wants to explore whether or not they can start doing things on Etsy or launch their own line um, or just, yeah, even, like you were just talking about, like while you were at work, how you manage time. But I mean, maybe some folks right now are not working, and so what might be an opportunity or something to explore, and like how you would think through that or make recommendations.
Yeah, my biggest thing with starting with jewelry is that I had to self-fund everything and I had to do everything within my means. So my biggest tip is always just to like start small and start with what you can afford to do if you're doing something that requires to spend some money. I think it's very important that I'm a person who like, I have like student loan debt, and like that has taught me the biggest life lesson that like I do not want to owe anybody any money ever again. And so I never wanted to like take out a bank loan to start my business. I never wanted to borrow money from anybody. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. If you are able to, and that's going to really propel your business, whereas you can pay that money back very quickly, by all means. But I knew in my case, I just wanted to see what I could do and see what I can do on my own. So I would self-fund, and then whatever I sold, that money would basically just go right back into the business. So I would buy like a new tool, or I would sign up for a new class, or I would, you know, I have to like pay like monthly fees for my website and for my URL, not for my URL, for like my email account and all these other things. So all those things just kind of like helped, me not go into the red too much. I also realized that jewelry is like not the only thing that I've been wanting to do. I have like a million trillion ideas, and you would know, of course. And I realized that with jewelry, that was the one thing that I could do where I could see the most immediate response in terms of like being able to make money and build a brand for myself. So I think in terms of like one's personal dreams or goals with starting something, if you have a few ideas, look at all of them and see which one you can accomplish with like the least amount of money and the least amount of time, and just use that to get off the ground and kind of use that to like learn some of the lessons that you're going to have to learn as a business owner, because like even if I do 12 other projects that are not related to jewelry, there's still like some parallels between all of them that, is going to help inform future decisions. Like I've learned a lot by having a jewelry business. I like did things that I didn't do before. Like I hired an accountant, which is like, you think that's a simple thing, but for me, my mom was my accountant for like however many years that was. And then I'm like, I actually need a professional to help me figure out numbers, and to make those numbers work out in my benefit. But that's something I get to carry with me into like future businesses as well. I also highly recommend that like, if you're doing any business that's going to allow you to make a profit off of it, definitely set up yourself as an LLC or an S Corp. It is kind of an annoying process if you try to do most of it yourself, like I did, because I was trying to save money again because of self-funding. So I was like, I'm not paying $500 for somebody to do this, but I'll pay $150 to like get to a certain point online and then figure out the rest on my own. But that's going to help you out from a tax perspective. Very, very much so. I felt like everything changed when I started doing that. I also started getting more discounts with different vendors that I buy supplies from, because they saw me as a legitimate business versus as a hobbyist.
That's a great tip.
Yeah. And yeah, I just highly encourage people to just like do what you can within your means. Also consult your network. Your friend network is probably like one of your most valuable resources, especially if you have like honest ride or die friends that will just like not be yes people and tell you like, this idea is great, but maybe think about it this way, or let's talk about this, that, and the other. Like these are like basically free consultants for you. And they're very, very valuable resources. I mean, I remember when I was thinking about a name for my company, which just wound up being my own name. I had definitely consulted so many people with like a whole list of names in a Google Doc. and people would give their opinions and whatnot. But like, what I realized is that everybody was just kind of like ho-hummy about all the names. And then all of a sudden I said, maybe it should be my name. And everybody was like, oh my God, yes, it needs to be your name. It's your line. It doesn't make any sense if it's anything else. And that was really, really helpful for me, because like sometimes you have to get out of your own head and you have to talk to the people around you. They're also a great test market for you as well. Like if you're testing out sizing, or if you're testing out, if you're a chef and you're making things and you want to test out flavors, like your friend group or your family group are like the best people, your best consultants for these things. Because they'll tell you if they like it or if they don't. I mean, I hope they would tell you if they don't like it or if they don't.
Good friends will tell you for sure.
Good friends will tell you.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think those would be the biggest things for me.
So, I mean, that was definitely one of the questions I was going to ask you, in terms of just like how important has having a community of support been for you through this process? And it sounds like, you've reached out to friends of yours, but is there like a professional community that exists for people who are in the jewelry business, or anything like that? And like, if you sought that out, or how to even go about doing that for people who are just getting started?
Yeah, I belong to an organization called the Female Design Council. A friend of mine had told me about it, because my career for the past almost 7 years has been in the design world, and design meaning like the built environment, not graphic design. And when I joined, it was just like really insightful as like a kind of wallflower situation. And then when they realized that I actually was a maker myself, I had gotten like this like low key support that I like really did not know I needed. I have become friends with like a number of people within the organization, and some became customers, or some just became friends, and like they were people that you could just talk to, or and sit and moan about being in the design industry, or the troubles that you have being a woman in the design industry. And I realized that like as a woman, especially as a Black woman of color, it's really hard to find people to talk to when you're existing within a very male dominated space. I mean, like you could even argue that jewelry is very much a male dominated space, especially if you go down to the diamond district. Most of the shops are owned and run by men. I'm lucky because my caster, I think it's owned by a man who I've never met before, but the people who run it are like a team of really fierce women. So it just makes me feel like at ease. And then like in terms of like directly jewelry stuff, I don't really belong to any organization, but I've been finding out more as I have been like, spending a little bit more time on Instagram and just like seeing like what's out there. There's like a new initiative that started like 2 or 3 years ago called NYC Jewelry Week. And they have been like super supportive ever since like I kind of really started pushing more of my stuff out there. Even a friend of mine who's a jewelry designer, who is like an amazing jewelry designer. And I think I suffered from like very much imposter syndrome, because like her abilities are just like crazy. And I'm like, look at my little metal things. Blah, blah, blah. But like she reached out about an organization that she's a part of that's helping bring more visibility to Black, Indigenous, people of color who are jewelry designers in the industry, which is like crazy, because like when I started this, like I didn't even know there were that many of us that existed. Like, I would see like, different like crafty like jewelry vendors, like Etsy level stuff. But then I started seeing more and more like professional jewelers. And that was just so inspiring, because like it's really hard to exist in this kind of space by yourself without, and think that you're alone. And then all of a sudden like this whole door opens up and you're like, oh, wait, oh, hi. And it's been really great knowing that those people exist, especially because like I'm personally not a competitive person. Except for I guess with like sports and board games, but that doesn't count. But like I've always been very much about like sticking together and being supportive of one another's work, even if you're in the same exact industry and you're doing the same exact thing. I think it's so important because, ideas and career paths do not exist in a vacuum. And yeah, we might be both making jewelry, but your jewelry is going to look completely different than mine. Your story is different than mine. And your customer base is going to like come to you because like they see what you're doing and they relate to you, or they come to me because they see what I'm doing and they relate to me. And that's totally fine. And I think it's totally okay. And it also, especially for jewelry, like our vendors operate in these really small and like tiny little places, and I can't afford to have any of my vendors close or go out of business. So if there's like any resource I can give to somebody in the industry, or like, you know, if I have to tell somebody my caster or all this other stuff, it only helps me later because it helps give those people business, and then it helps me with my business, because if they close, then I'm stuck and I have to like go through this whole process where I have to find like a new person to do all this work that I've like set up for myself and my company to make my life easier. And that's took me like a year to do that. So like, you know, to have to spend another year looking for all that stuff, like why do that? Why not just like, you know, build community and like, you know, invite people into your world and like share resources and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I can't agree with you more. I think sometimes, especially if you are a business owner, you maybe get put in the mindset where it's kind of like a zero-sum game, and that's actually not true, right? And yeah, totally, it does matter your percentage of the pie, but there's another way to make it, which is just grow the pie, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so I think that is something that is really important, and finding other folks that you can work with. And who's to say, exactly like you said, that, you know, people's positions don't change later, other opportunities don't come about, that different collaborative projects don't come from one thing or the next thing. So yeah, I'm just, even the reason that, you know, I mentioned in the intro, but why Shop Small Sunday exists is because I just think that there's this amazing world out there of people who are doing stuff, and that sometimes we are siloed by ourselves. And so
Right.
having the moment to just like be like, hi, like I'm out here, like who are you, what are you doing, and bringing some visibility and bringing some attention just to each other, so that we could all do better, grow, and then yeah, keep making our pie ever so big.
Yeah.
So yeah, totally. So on that note of just talking about growing the pie, so where can we buy your pieces, and where can we find you on social media or every other place that we can find you?
It's very easy. It's my website is sadé.gold. There's
Okay.
no .com or .org or anything. It's literally .gold. So it's SADE.gold. And my Instagram account is the exact same, sadé.gold. Those are my two biggest platforms right now. I'm hoping to, like, now that I have a new studio space, I'm hoping to like kind of extend like what my doings are on the interwebs. But for right now, that's it.
No, I would love to see that, because I think that everything that you just talked about, like making molds and castings, like that sounds so cool. So just, yeah, I would love to see what your process is like, because it sounds so interesting. And it's really like very involved, and I would love to see like when it works, when it doesn't work, and you like start over. I can't imagine like molding something. Like, yeah, I just think that I would break everything and it would be a terrible idea. So
Oh, things don't
I'll
make me break. Yeah, all the time.
and one more thing. So I hear that there's going to be a little perk for folks to shop on the site. And so what would that be, if you want to share with the audience?
Yes, free shipping for the next 30 days using a code Sadé loves Nohble, because I do.
I'm
Yeah,
back.
and that's only for the US, though, only because like shipping abroad is like a little bit more involved. But
Yeah, it's tough. But thank you for doing that. I think it's amazing. And thank you for sharing your insights and your time right now. And anything else that you would want to add before we call it a day today?
no.
I
I
was
can't think of anything, but thank you for having me. This has been a pleasure. And yeah, I kind of love helping people, you know,
Yeah, I'm
start.
actually really excited for all of the new stuff that you're working on, that you've kind of mentioned is percolating in the background, because
Oh yeah,
I could use, yeah. So speaking of not a zero-sum game of there's like multiple things on my hand, I could totally use something maybe on these fingers here. So
oh, amazing. Yeah.
yeah.
There's a new collection that'll be launching soon. It's kind of pre-launched a bit with LA Design Week on a website called InCollect. There's 3 pieces that'll be part of it. The pieces on In Collect are made from 14 karat gold, yellow and white, and with like a black diamond or a normal diamond. And the stuff on my site, I usually tend to keep a little bit more affordable, meaning more like I keep it at a price point that I would pay for it versus like, in the $2,500 range where I'm like, oh, that's like rent money, So, but yeah, if you want to see what those pieces look like, they'll be on In Collect until I want to say for another couple of weeks, and then everything else will be on my site.
Amazing. All right. Well, thank you again for doing this, and I hope to see you in person sometime
Oh my
soon.
God, that'd be amazing.
All right.
Thank you.